Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the Veramed Stories podcast. I'm your host, Himesh, and this week we are talking about PHUSE EU. I am joined by Greg, who just came back from PHUSE and was his first time presenting. So, Greg, welcome to the podcast.
Hiya, nice to be here. Yeah, as you've just said, just got back from PHUSE EU in Belfast, so quite excited to talk about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, before we talk about that, you actually got accepted to present at PHUSE 2020. And we all know that was a interesting time in human history with the lockdowns, etc. So would you be able to sort of talk about that? Like, what did you submit there and where was that meant to be held?
Yeah, so that was March 2020, was meant to be PHUSE US Connect in Orlando. I think it was actually in SeaWorld.
Oh, wow.
Sort of around that area of Florida. So it would have been an incredible experience. But yeah, I had a poster accepted there. But sadly, about 2 days before we were due to fly, they pulled the plug on the conference due to COVID. Sure, most people had already worked that out. So yeah, sadly did not attend in the end. The poster was still presented. It's still on the PHUSE website. So it looks like I did present it virtually, but sadly I never actually made it to the conference.
That's a bit of a shame, really, because going to Orlando, I don't know if you've been before, great time, all the theme parks and everything, obviously PHUSE as well. And obviously being pulled only 2 days before the conference, I can imagine it being sort of the whole week leading up to it, like it was all very unknown territory for everyone, really, whether things are still going ahead or not. So obviously I can imagine a lot of disappointment.
Yeah, it was quite a disappointing, I think it was the Thursday evening, it was quite a disappointing day, sort of news filtering through of it actually being cancelled, and then on the Friday having conversations about whether we were still going to fly out there, or even though the conference wasn't on because the flights had been booked and things like that, and we had hotels booked and activities planned. I decided not to fly out, which I think was the right call. Yes. Looking back, as I think on the Wednesday, which would have been sort of 4 days later, Disney World closed. Right. So it would have been a very pointless trip out there if I had gone.
Yes, and you don't want the risk of getting there and then being stranded and not getting back.
Yeah, that wouldn't have been good.
No, definitely not. Anyway, now 2022, and you did finally manage to get to a PHUSE. So what did you present this time?
This time submitted to the EU Connect rather than the US Connect, and submitted a presentation on a piece of work we've been doing with one of our large clients, sort of looking at the data monitoring committee workflow and how we've worked alongside a third party and the client to get unblinded outputs produced without sending proprietary information from the client to the third party. So it looks at a general workflow of how we have worked and sort of moved pieces of code around. And the main topic is actually using a SaaS option called MFiles. So the title of the presentation is The MFiles I Want to Believe.
Okay.
For any X-Files fans out there.
Nice.
So it talks on that and sort of the challenges we've had, any lessons learned, and sort of it's a way of hopefully teaching others about this method and the fact that you can do it, and letting people know where the pitfalls might be, because there were quite a few.
Right. So using this method, how much were you using it in your sort of day-to-day life, and when did you sort of think like, oh, this would be a good thing to present?
So we started doing this in, I think the first time we actually ran it was sort of Feb 2021. So we do it on 2 projects, and sort of the first DMC was around Feb 2021, and been doing it up until this point and continuing to do this process. So I think in total we've done it for 6 DMCs and then dry runs as well. So I think we've run it 10 or 12 times in total. In terms of when I figured out it'd probably be a good presentation, it was probably around Feb 2022. So about a year later, once we'd seen enough pitfalls that I could talk on it and sort of give enough positives around it as well. Because for the first year, it was quite a challenging process. We were finding lots of pitfalls and lots of errors. But after a year or so, we started to get into a good rhythm. And a lot of those challenges were kind of on the back burner, and we were kind of getting through it a lot quicker.
Right. And was this something that you did sort of just within the project that you were leading, or is this something like once you kind of ironed out some of the pitfalls, you let on to other sort of study leads to use as well?
So that was always the intention. The plan was that we were going to be a pilot study or 2 pilot studies for this method to see how it would work and whether it was feasible moving forward. I believe that the client has now decided to not go with this method generally, but it is still viable and you can still use it. And I personally would recommend it because it is actually quite efficient when you actually get into the rhythm of it. But like I said, it does take a while to get there.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And obviously, being the first time doing it, like you don't know where what's going to go wrong at what point. So I can imagine there was a lot of work going into this.
I mean, I think the first time we ran it, the first error we came up or found when we made the unblinded outputs was that the page numbering was wrong. Now, that's not an issue I would ever have thought would have happened in tables, but that is actually what the third party sent back to us. They're like, the tables look great, they look how you expect, but you've got page 2 of 1.
It's always those little things that are really niggly and really fiddly and really annoying to sort out.
That one was actually not too bad to sort out, to be honest. In the conversion that we do, we just replaced a macro variable, which was maximum page number, with the maximum page number on the blinded outputs. So we just had to put that macro variable back in. It was fine. Okay. But it was kind of the start of where things might go wrong if we started to figure out other problems. Nothing major, I will say. It was all pretty minor and very visual. A lot of the actual data in the background was perfect. And actually, I don't think the data sets have ever been a problem. It's been the visuals on the outputs where it's been a bit more tricky, should we say.
Right, I see. And so now, sort of looking back, is there anything that you would have done differently, or what are the biggest sort of lessons learned from this?
So one of the main things, and I touch on this in my presentation, is just to kind of proceed with care and to put a lot or front load a lot of the work, because the more you do in that first run, the more issues you can identify before you send to that third party, the easier it is for you and them.
Right.
And also you don't have them coming back to you saying the page numbers are wrong. We'd have picked that up earlier.
Yeah.
And one of the things you could do is sort of unit testing of the process. So instead of what we did is run it on a few different randomization schemes to try and find any of those issues. But we were mainly looking in the numbers. So we were looking at when the numbers go wrong, which was actually very infrequently. But I think if you do more sort of different randomization schemes and lots of different unit testing type techniques, we'd have spotted way more of these little pitfalls, like the page numbers. We'd have clocked that quicker and things like that. So that's probably my recommendation.
Okay, fair enough. In terms of just presenting in general, and this being your first FUSE, how did you find it at your talk?
Yeah, there was quite a few. So I sort of envisioned basically a classroom, if I'm honest, going in, sort of 40 chairs, probably about 20 people in it.
Sure.
I walked into the room on the Sunday night when they showed you where you're presenting, and it's this massive conference room with dining tables and chairs around it, and a stage with 2 projectors. And I must admit, at that point, I was a bit nervous and the anxiety started to creep in, but
I can imagine
it was actually great. I think presenting in that environment was so different to how I'd ever done it before, because it'd always been in a boardroom or online. It's very rare that you're stood on a stage with nothing in front of you.
That's true. Yeah.
And talking to people. So other things that really helped me is the 2 people before me in my stream both used the overhead mic. So they didn't have a podium in front of them and the mics there. They had it call mics type thing. So it's more typical presenting style microphones. And because they both did it, I sort of felt a bit obliged to, but in the end, it was much better because it meant I didn't have to stand in one place and look at a podium. I could move around the stage a bit more and gesture with my arms a bit more and sort of present a bit more with my body language.
Yes.
Which is much better. Also, there was a big screen in front of me by my feet, which had my presentation slides, which was a lot easier to read than the screen on the podium, which again, made it a lot easier. But I think, generally it was a very good experience. And there was probably 35 people in the room, I'd say.
Okay.
All who seemed very well engaged and got plenty of good questions at the end. Some fairly nice questions as well. There was nothing too difficult to answer, which does relieve the nerves when you stood there and someone's hand goes up.
No, absolutely. And like you said, when you get to sort of walk around the stage a bit more and express with your body and stuff like that, you come across more confident and you can project more. And I suppose it helps walk off the nerves or any anxiety you're feeling at the start of the presentation.
Yeah. And I think what also relaxed me is I decided probably only about 40 minutes before my presentation, actually, that I was going to change my opening,
Oh,
which
wow.
most people would suggest is a terrible idea. But I decided to make a joke about the fact that there was no X-Files references throughout my presentation and apologize to those X-Files fans if they'd come for that. And I got a few chuckles, nothing big laughter, but a couple of chuckles.
No, but it breaks the ice, doesn't it?
Yeah. So that again settled me down of like, okay, they are here for the actual presentation. No one walked out at the point there was no X-Files references again, which was quite nice.
Yeah, that is good. So, what kind of advice would you give to someone else who's like first-time presenters at a big conference?
I think the first thing is present on something you know. That really helped me. I know this topic so well, as I've already said. We've been doing this for, 18 months now, or nearly 2 years. So I know it really well. I can answer any question on it. And so I was pretty confident that I knew more about my topic than anyone else in the room.
Right, yeah.
Now I can imagine if you were doing a topic you didn't know too much about, you might have that nerves. But actually, chances are you do actually, if you're presenting on it, you probably are the most knowledgeable in the room. And that, again, relaxed me a bit of like, there would be very few questions I couldn't answer. The other bit of advice I would say is don't have a podium mic, have the overhead mic if that's possible. This is going to sound quite weird, but not having a podium in front of me and kind of being vulnerable to the audience was quite nice. There was nothing to hide away from.
Yeah.
So it meant that I couldn't just curl up and stand behind the podium and hold it and sort of shake because everyone would have seen it. So I had to relax.
Yeah.
And again, that made the presentation feel quicker and was just easier.
And I suppose it makes it sound more natural. I feel sometimes when you've got a podium in front of you or you're reading off cue cards, some people, especially if they're nervous, have the tendency of hunching up and just looking at the cue cards and not looking at anyone's face. And it even if you know your subject matter well, it doesn't come across that well. But like you said, having the ability to have freedom and not be hidden by anything, it helps you come across really well. So that's really good. So while you were there, did you attend many other talks as well? What was your sort of like favorite kind of topics, or what were your big takeaways from FHUSE?
I attended probably 10 or so presentations across the 3 days of presentations. Sort of the general themes that I saw were R and R shiny. I think that's been a big topic in FHUSE and the industry in general recently.
Yes.
The other one that sort of piqued my interest was there's a lot of talks on different leadership styles and different innovation tactics and different ways of working. So agile techniques, and they're kind of the topics that I tended to go for. But other topics, there's a lot on real world evidence, automation, which were very well attended talks, and probably some of the best presentations were on automation, I think, generally.
And was there any talks that you went to and then you saw how other people were sort of presenting that you were like, oh, I'll do this next time, or any sort of takeaways in just presenting in general?
Yeah, I think so. I think, about 2 presentations before my own of the fact that they put the overhead mic on.
Yes.
And then I did that. So I took that sort of feedback straight away of that's probably what I should do. In terms of other things, I think just simple slides. Some of the most impressive slides that I saw were the simple ones without anything on. There was just a picture of something or a little graphic to show what you're doing. And those ones which people were taking photos of or making notes on. It wasn't the ones where they got so much information crammed onto them because they're like, well, I can go back and look at that later on. But the ones with not a lot on, they were like, I need to remember that one.
Right. And is there something that you would change in your presentation or like your future presentations in the slides themselves?
Probably not this one. I think, not to blow my own trumpet, but I quite like my slides.
Okay.
I think I kept them quite simple and quite succinct. I think I would just keep moving forward in that sort of style of as few words as possible. Because also then it helps with that. You don't want to read your own slides. So if you don't have anything on your slides, you just can't do that. Yeah. So it means that they have to listen to you rather than just read it as well.
Yeah, exactly. It helps like audience engagement and things. And
you're
using them more as prompts for yourself rather than, like you said, reading off them, which that was always a pet peeve of mine where someone's just reading off their slides. I was like, well, I can read as well. So So this was the first in-person FHUSE since all the lockdowns and everything like that. So what was the sort of general feel around the conference? Were people just excited to be mixing with people again?
Yeah, I think that was really evident. On the Sunday night, it was meant to be the poster session, and there was those posters up, but most people were just seeing people they hadn't seen for 2-3 years and having conversations, and just it was really nice to see how happy everyone was to see each other again. And there's so many people who have clearly been working together for a long time that finally met. I mean, myself included. I met someone who's been on this project with me for 2 years that I met for the first time.
Oh wow.
At FHUSE. And that, again, it was just there was just a general buzz of excitement of being in person and being able to have those pleasant conversations and not feeling obliged because you're on calls. And yeah, there was a big buzz around that, and everyone was just excited to be there.
Yeah, that's really good. Like, it's always nice to like sort of finally meet someone in real life, and then the next time you speak on video, you just feel a bit more casual, don't you?
Yeah,
a bit more like at home. That's really good. So, how many other people from Veramed went to FHUSE, and was there a lot more other presentations?
Yes, so we had 5 presentations, I think. So there was myself. I presented first on the Monday. Then we had quite a busy Tuesday. We had Tom Ratford present, Stuart Malcolm present, Diana Stewart present, and Anastasia present. I've now realised we actually had 6 presentations, because on the Wednesday we also had Anton present. So we had 6 across the 3 days, which was amazing. Everyone at Veramed presented really well, I thought. And it was just nice to see everyone up there and presenting on topics that they do. And for my own selfish sort of trait, it was quite nice to see what the people at Veramed are doing and seeing that side of it.
Yeah.
In terms of the people we had, Matt and Catherine were there as well, and Bradley, along with Stuart Maguire on the Monday. So we had quite a big Veramed contingent, which again was really nice. It was nice to sort of socialise with people at Veramed in a different way. We went out for dinner on the Tuesday to a very, very nice Asian fusion restaurant, which had incredible food. So that was a really nice evening, actually.
It's always good. I feel I already know your answer. Would you present again?
Absolutely. I'm already trying to come up with my next PHUSE EU title. I sadly won't be going to US Connect, which is in Orlando next year. I decided not to put in for that one. I didn't have a presentation, so it would have been quite hard to scramble around for one. But yeah, I will definitely be looking to put in for EU 2023, which is in Birmingham, if I remember correctly. So hopefully I'll be accepted and be there then.
I'm sure you will. And obviously now the second time presenting, it'll just be even more confident, and now you kind of know already what to expect. And I'm sure there'll be some other Verameders that will go with you as well, and obviously some first time presenters. So having someone like yourself who's just presented, you can kind of like help ease their nerves a bit and coach them through a little bit, and just make it a pleasant experience for everyone. So that's really great.
Yeah, I hope so. I think I tried to do that anyway, as I was presenting first on Mondays, then Tom and Anastasia, who'd never presented on Tuesday, I tried to reassure them a bit, and I hope I relax them before going in. But yeah, if I was to go to Birmingham, it would be a great experience, and hopefully I could try and relax some of those first time presenters again.
Yeah, definitely.
But also, I think one of the things I noticed was people quite often go to the talks of people they've heard of before or they've worked with. So the more presentations you do, the more well-known you become, and therefore the more well-attended your presentations are.
I see. Okay, so it's sort of, you've got to network a little bit as well to kind of just coax people in. A bit of a random question. So the title of your presentation was a sort of pun on MFiles.
Yeah.
Do you think like having a nice catchy title is another way of sort of like making sure people get them interested and see what's this talk about, sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I love a pun. I can't lie. The poster I submitted to the US Connect was called "Titles Are a Programmer's Best Friend."
Nice.
Again, bit of a pun there. I just think it gets people engaged a bit more. If people think you've got a bit of a sense of humor, they might come down just for that, to have a bit of a break from the very dry programming talks that they're going to be, because we're a programming industry. It's quite a lot of dry topics generally. So hopefully if you have that sort of humor element, people might come for that. What I will say though is it did mean that not a lot of people knew what my presentation was going to be on. And some of the presentation titles, although they're longer and sort of more just to the point, you at least knew what they were definitely going to be on. So you had more dedicated people going with questions prepared already. Whereas I think a lot of people went to mine just out of curiosity to see what it was going to be. Because although the abstracts were available to read, what we actually saw on the sort of agenda and sort of on the app was just the title and sort of the number of the stream that it was in. So you could click in and read the abstract, but personally, I was just clicking on titles and going, that one looks like an interesting topic, I'll go to that. So it's probably a balancing act for titles of having a bit of humor is good, but also making sure people know what your presentation is going to be on is also probably quite key.
Yeah, fair enough. So I suppose next time, again, these are just lessons you can implement for next time. No. So Greg, how would you sort of summarize your time at PHUSE EU?
I loved every second of it, from getting on the plane, that sort of anticipation on Sunday morning, just quite early on Sunday morning, to when we eventually got back on Wednesday evening. I just loved every second, would recommend it to anyone. It was a great experience. Everyone there was really friendly, really welcoming. I think one of the things I took from it is everyone wants you to come back to PHUSE. So couldn't recommend it more than anyone. And presenting was, also just an incredible experience, and something I would recommend to other people if they want to sort of put themselves out there. It's quite a big thing to do. If you want to put yourself out there, I'd give it a go. Yeah,
exactly. And because I think when you hear about these big sort of conferences, like people do get a bit nervous of like, what do I know enough about a topic to present and stuff like that. So I think it's great advice, really. Just present on something that you're aware of. You will probably be the most knowledgeable person if you get accepted. Like there's a reason you got accepted. So take that as confidence and just go with it. So Greg, for anyone that missed your presentation, what can we do?
Yeah, so I will be recording it again, so that there'll be a version through the Veramed YouTube channel. So if you would like to go watch it, it'll be there. Or if you have any questions, you can always contact me if you would like.
Excellent. Well, Greg, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast this week. I'm glad you really enjoyed your first experience on PHUSE, and it's some great advice that you've given to anyone that is going to be attending any future conferences. Thank you all very much for listening. If you'd like to be notified for any future podcast episodes, please subscribe to us on Spotify, iTunes, or whichever podcast platform you're using. If you'd like to know more about Veramed, please visit our website at veramed.co.uk, or you can find us on LinkedIn. If you have any questions about Veramed, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to help. You can find us on YouTube and Instagram at We Are Veramed. Thank you all very much for listening, and until next time, goodbye.